Move your ghetto ass to the back where you belong. Rebecca Miller's manicured nails dug into James Thompson's navy pullover. She yanked hard. The fabric tore with a sharp rip, threads dangling from his shoulder like broken promises. His collar stretched grotesquely. The tier gaped open, exposing his white undershirt beneath. Gate 42, first class boarding, Atlanta International. James stood frozen in worn jeans and navy pullover. Rebecca smoothed her Chanel suit and claimed his seat like a conquering queen. Her diamond bracelet caught the fluorescent light as she buckled in. 15 years Platinum Elite, she announced to gathering phones. I know who belongs here. A passenger hit record. Another typed furiously. The live stream counter climbed. 12:47. 156 viewers. These real-life stories of discrimination reveal how black stories become touching stories that force America to confront its ugliest truths. Have you ever watched someone destroy your dignity in public, assuming you were powerless to fight back? James touched his torn shoulder, fingers tracing the jagged edge. The white threads hung like accusations. He didn't speak, didn't move. His dark eyes held something Rebecca couldn't read. I don't know how you scammed that seat, Rebecca announced, voice pitched to carry. But I'm Platinum Elite. 15 years with this airline. She crossed her arms, designer rings catching the gate lighting. Security needs to check your ticket. Now. Her finger jabbed toward James like a weapon. Conversations died. Phones rose. The boarding area transformed into an amphitheater, with James center stage in his ripped shirt. Emma Rodriguez pulled out her iPhone. Facebook Live. Y'all seeing this? She whispered to her screen. The viewer count climbed. 23, 67, 156. Comments flooded in real time. This is insane. Did she just rip his shirt? Someone call security. But Rebecca was already ahead of them. Excuse me? She waved frantically at gate agent Sarah Johnson. This man is in my seat. He needs to show proof of purchase for first class. Sarah hurried over, clipboard in hand, professional smile fixed in place. She glanced at James's torn shirt, at Rebecca's immaculate appearance, and made her calculation in seconds. Sir, I'll need to see your confirmation number and identification, Sarah said, not looking James in the eye. James reached into his worn leather portfolio. The movement was deliberate, controlled. His fingers brushed past something embossed, JT Enterprises in small gold letters. Rebecca couldn't see it from her stolen throne. Of course, James said quietly. But may I ask what prompted this verification request? His voice carried no anger, no defensiveness, just curiosity, as if he were studying an interesting specimen. Rebecca scoffed. Are you serious? Look at yourself. She gestured at his jeans, his sneakers, his torn shirt. I've been flying this route every month for 15 years. I know who belongs in first class. Emma's live stream audience swelled. 847 viewers. The comments section exploded. This is racial profiling in real time. That woman is insane. Why isn't anyone helping him? James pulled out his boarding pass. As he handed it to Sarah, his phone case caught the light. A small badge attached. Something about an airline industry conference. Rebecca missed it entirely. Everything appears to be in order, Sarah murmured, studying the pass. But her eyes darted nervously between Rebecca's expectant face and the growing crowd of onlookers. That's impossible, Rebecca snapped. Run it through the system again. Check for fraud. James's hand moved to his vintage Rolex. A subtle gesture, checking the time. 7:03 a.m. His fingers lingered on the watch face, platinum, with custom airline industry insignia etched into the band. Another detail lost in the chaos. Ma'am, James said to Rebecca, his tone unnaturally calm. I appreciate your dedication to this airline. I really do. Something in his voice made Sarah look up sharply, but Rebecca was just getting started. "Don't patronize me," she hissed. "I've seen this scam before. Fake boarding passes, stolen credit cards. You people think you can just—" "Rebecca Miller, seat 2B." The announcement came from flight attendant David Wilson, emerging from the jetway. He'd been watching through the window, making his own assumptions about the torn shirt passenger versus the perfectly groomed woman. "Thank you," Rebecca beamed. "Finally, someone with sense." David approached James with practiced authority. "Sir, we're going to need to sort this out quickly. We board in 7 minutes." James nodded, reached for his phone, opened an app, the airline's internal employee portal. The screen flashed briefly before he closed it. "I understand completely," James said. "This does need immediate resolution." Emma's Facebook Live hit 1,200 viewers. Someone had shared it. The comments were a waterfall of outrage and disbelief. "This is 2025 and we're still doing this? That man is so calm, I'm getting chills. Something's not right here." Rebecca settled deeper into seat 2A, buckling her seatbelt like a statement of ownership. Finally, someone who understands proper protocol. She pulled out her phone, opened Instagram stories, titled it, "Watching Airline Security Handle a Seat Scammer, hashtags, #first class, #security, #protocols." The post went live to her 3,400 followers. Screenshots began immediately. James stood in the jetway opening, hands clasped behind his back. The torn fabric of his shirt fluttered slightly in the air conditioning. He looked like a man waiting for something, not defeat, not rescue, something else entirely. Sarah's radio crackled. "Gate 42, this is operations. We have a situation developing." "Copy that," Sarah responded, glancing nervously at the growing crowd. More passengers had stopped to watch, some filming, some whispering, some looking uncomfortable but saying nothing. David positioned himself between James and the aircraft door. "Sir, until we resolve this, I'm going to need you to step aside." "Of course," James replied. He moved with unhurried grace, like a chess player who'd already seen the endgame. Rebecca's Instagram story had been screenshotted 47 times in 2 minutes. The comments on Emma's live stream passed 500. Airport security had been called. But James just stood there, checking his phone with the patience of a man who owned time itself. Airport security officer Michael Davis arrived with his supervisor, Jennifer Clark. Their boots echoed against the terminal floor. Jennifer carried herself like management, pressed uniform, radio clipped precisely, eyes scanning for liability. "What's the situation here?" Jennifer asked Sarah, but her gaze fixed on James's torn shirt. The calculation was instant, automatic. Damaged clothing equals problem passenger. "Seating irregularity," David announced over the gate intercom. His voice carried through Terminal C like a verdict. "We're resolving a seating irregularity at Gate 42. Passengers boarding other flights slowed their pace, heads turned. More phones emerged from pockets and purses. Rebecca's Instagram story had exploded. 156 shares in 4 minutes. Her followers were commenting in real time. "Handled like a boss. Security finally doing their job. This is why I fly first class." But Twitter was telling a different story. Number first-class drama had started trending in Atlanta. Screenshots of Emma's live stream were spreading faster than airport security could contain the situation. Emma held her phone steady, narrating for her 2,300 viewers. "This man hasn't raised his voice once, hasn't argued, hasn't done anything but stand there." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Something about this feels really wrong." The comment section had become a battlefield. "This is textbook discrimination. He's too calm. CEOs act like this. Someone needs to help him. That woman is about to get humbled." Jennifer approached James with practiced authority. "Mr." She paused, waiting for a name. Thompson, James supplied quietly. Mr. Thompson, we need to resolve this quickly. We're boarding in 5 minutes. She gestured toward the growing crowd. This is creating a disturbance. James nodded once. I agree completely. This needs resolution. His tone remained unnaturally even. No frustration leaked through. Michael Davis shifted uncomfortably. 30 years in security had taught him to read anger, fear, guilt. This man showed none of those emotions. Rebecca leaned forward in seat 2A, enjoying her front-row view of vindication. Finally! Someone with authority who understands protocol. She pulled up Twitters on her phone, searching hashtag #firstclassdrama. The first few tweets made her smile wider. Then she scrolled further. Her expression shifted. That woman is about to regret this. Anyone else getting main character energy from the quiet guy? His calm is giving me CEO vibes. Rebecca's thumb hovered over her screen. A seed of doubt sprouted, but she crushed it immediately. She knew what she saw. Expensive suit versus torn shirt, confident authority versus displaced passenger. Ma'am, Michael Davis said to Rebecca, we're going to need you to step out of the seat while we verify both tickets. Absolutely not. Rebecca's voice rose an octave. I am not moving until you verify his fraud. The crowd thickened. Gate 44 passengers abandoned their own boarding process to watch the drama unfold. Someone started a TikTok live stream. Another person called their spouse to turn on the news. Something's happening at the airport. Emma's Facebook Live hit 3,100 viewers. The airline's Twitter account was getting tagged every few seconds. At Skyline Airways, your gate agents are racially profiling passengers right now. At Skyline Airways, this is being live-streamed to thousands. At Skyline Airways, hashtag #firstclass. Drama is trending because of your staff. Jennifer's radio crackled with increasing urgency. Gate 42, operations. Corporate is asking for status update. We have social media escalation. James heard every word. His expression never changed, but his fingers drummed once against his leg. The only sign of, what? Impatience? Amusement? David Wilson returned from the jetway, looking frazzled. We need to board. The crew is asking about delays. Then handle this, Rebecca snapped from her claimed throne. Verify his ticket, find the fraud, and get him off this plane. James reached for his phone again. The airline employee app opened briefly, just long enough for Jennifer to catch a glimpse of an interface she didn't recognize. Her brow furrowed. Mr. Thompson, Jennifer said slowly. What company do you work for? I'm in aerospace, James replied simply. Rebecca laughed. Aerospace? What, you fix planes? Something flickered across James's face. Not anger, something colder, more dangerous. Michael Davis positioned his officers strategically. One near James, one by the jetway entrance. Standard containment protocol for difficult passengers. But James hadn't been difficult. That was what bothered Michael most. Sir, Michael said, I'm going to need you to step away from the boarding area. Of course. James moved with fluid grace, hands visible, no sudden movements. Professional courtesy from someone who understood authority structures. That bothered Michael even more. Rebecca's phone buzzed. A DM from someone who'd seen her Instagram story. Girl, you might want to delete that post. Something big is coming. She blocked the account immediately. Emma's live stream chat was moving too fast to read. He works in aerospace. Aerospace equals airlines. This woman is about to get destroyed. Someone check the passenger manifest. Jennifer's radio squawked again. Gate 42, this is operations. Regional manager en route. Do not escalate further. But it was too late for containment. Number first class drama had jumped from Atlanta to national trending. News bloggers were picking up Emma's live stream link. Rebecca's Instagram story was being dissected frame by frame across social platforms. James stood quietly in the corner, watching the chaos he hadn't created but somehow commanded. His torn shirt had become a symbol. Of what? Nobody was quite sure yet. 5 minutes to boarding completion, the gate announcement echoed. 5 minutes. Rebecca checked her seatbelt again, adjusting her position like a queen securing her throne. But her phone screen showed troubling signs. The Twitter tide was turning. Comments on her Instagram story were shifting from support to suspicion. "Ma'am," a passenger approached Rebecca hesitantly, "I think you should look at Twitter." "I don't care about Twitter," Rebecca replied, but her voice cracked slightly. David Wilson was sweating now. The crew was radioing about departure delays. Corporate was asking questions. Security was positioned for an incident that felt increasingly wrong. And James Thompson stood in the eye of the hurricane, checking his vintage Rolex, like a man counting down to something inevitable. The viewing numbers kept climbing. Emma's Facebook Live, 4,200 viewers. The TikTok stream, 1,800. Twitter mentions of hashtag first-class drama, 12,000 and accelerating. "Mr. Thompson," Jennifer said carefully, "perhaps we could discuss this privately." James looked at her with those unreadable dark eyes. "I think transparency is important, don't you? Especially in situations like this." Rebecca's phone buzzed again. Another DM. "Delete your post now, trust me." This time she didn't block the sender. She just stared at the message, wondering why her hands had started shaking. James pulled out his phone with deliberate slowness. The screen illuminated his calm features as he scrolled to a specific contact. His thumb hovered over the call button for exactly 3 seconds. Then he turned the phone toward Jennifer Clark. Her face drained of color instantly. The professional mask cracked, then shattered completely. She stepped backward as if the device had burned her retinas. "Oh my God," Jennifer whispered. "Mr. Thompson, we didn't realize." The shift in her voice cut through the gate noise like a blade. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Rebecca looked up from her phone, confusion flickering across her features. "Jennifer," James said quietly, "could you please call operations? Tell them James Thompson is at gate 42. His tone carried no malice, no triumph, just the calm authority of someone stating a simple fact. Jennifer's hands trembled as she reached for her radio. "Operations, this is gate 42. We need, Mr. James Thompson is here. Static, then, copy that. Understood. Stand by." The radio went silent, but something had fundamentally changed in the air around gate 42. Michael Davis noticed it first. The way Jennifer's posture had shifted from authority to deference. The way she wouldn't quite meet James's eyes anymore. David Wilson caught the energy shift and stepped closer. "What's happening?" "Nothing's happening," Rebecca announced from seat 2A, though uncertainty crept into her voice. "Management is finally handling this situation properly." But Emma's live stream chat was exploding with a different energy. "Did you see that manager's face? She knows something. Plot twist incoming. His phone did something." James slipped his phone back into his pocket. The movement revealed more of his torn shirt, but also something else, a slim badge attached to his belt loop. Corporate access. High-level clearance codes visible to anyone who knew what to look for. Jennifer knew what to look for. "Mr. Thompson," she stammered, "if we could discuss this privately—" "I think transparency is important," James interrupted gently, "especially given how public this situation has become." He gestured toward the forest of phones recording every word. Rebecca's Instagram notifications were accelerating beyond her ability to read them. Comments flooded in faster than she could process. "Girl, you need to run. Do you know who that is? Delete everything now. You're about to be famous for all the wrong reasons." But she was too focused on the strange transformation happening around her stolen seat. Security officers were repositioning themselves, not around James anymore, around the situation itself, as if protecting something valuable. "Ma'am," James said, turning toward Rebecca for the first time since she'd ripped his shirt. His voice remained perfectly level. "I appreciate your concern for proper airline protocol." Rebecca straightened in the seat. "Finally, you're welcome. I'm James Thompson." "So what?" Rebecca's voice carried forced bravado. "I don't care what your name is." James paused. The pause stretched just long enough to make everyone lean forward slightly. "I'm the CEO of Thompson Aerospace Holdings." The words dropped into the silence like stones into still water. Ripples of confusion spread through the crowd. Rebecca blinked. "What's that supposed to mean?" "We acquired this airline 6 months ago." Time stopped. Emma's phone nearly slipped from her hands. The live stream chat became a blur of capital letters and explosion emojis. "Holy shit, he owns the airline." She ripped the CEO's shirt. "This woman is done. Plot twist of the century." Rebecca's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. Her brain struggled to process the impossible equation. Torn shirt plus casual clothes plus calm demeanor equals owns the airline. "That's..." she started, then stopped, started again. "That's not possible." Michael Davis felt his stomach drop into his boots. 30 years of security experience, and he'd just positioned officers to contain the company owner. His hand moved instinctively toward his radio, but Jennifer was already ahead of him. "Operations, this is Jennifer Clark at Gate 42, Priority 1. I repeat, Priority 1. David Wilson's face had gone ashen. He'd announced a seating irregularity over the intercom about his own CEO. The crew was waiting for him to remove the man who signed their paychecks. "You're lying," Rebecca said, but her voice wavered. "You're making this up." James reached into his portfolio again. This time he withdrew a slim folder. SEC documents. Acquisition papers. Thompson Aerospace Holdings letterhead clearly visible. 73.2% controlling interest, he said quietly. Purchased March 15th, 2025 for $2.8 billion. The numbers hit like physical blows. Rebecca's designer confidence cracked completely. Emma zoomed in on the documents with her phone camera. Her 4,800 viewers could see the official seals, the corporate logos, the signatures that made James Thompson's quiet statement irrefutable fact. "This can't be happening," Rebecca whispered. But James wasn't finished. The revelation hung in the air, incomplete. He'd shown them the acquisition, proved his ownership. But there was something else, something bigger that he hadn't shared yet. The true scope of his holdings. The real reason he was on this flight. The systemic changes he'd been planning long before Rebecca Miller ripped his shirt. Jennifer's radio crackled with nervous energy. "Gate 42, corporate is en route. ETA 3 minutes. James checked his Rolex again. Not the gesture of an impatient passenger anymore. The movement of an executive monitoring a timeline. 3 minutes, he repeated thoughtfully. That should be sufficient. Rebecca sat frozen in seat 2A, still buckled in, still claiming territory that had never belonged to her. Around her, the entire power structure of the situation had inverted like an optical illusion suddenly seen clearly. The man she'd humiliated owned everything she could see, and he wasn't done with her yet. James opened his tablet with surgical precision. The screen displayed SEC filing 10K, Thompson Aerospace Holdings, dated March 15th, 2025. Numbers that didn't lie, signatures that couldn't be faked. Thompson Aerospace Holdings, he read aloud, his voice carrying through the stunned silence. Annual revenue, $4.2 billion. 47,000 employees across 12 airlines globally. Rebecca's hands gripped the armrests of seat 2A like anchors in a storm. The leather creaked under her white knuckles. Controlling interest acquired for $2.8 billion, James continued, scrolling through official documents. Purchase included all domestic routes, international partnerships, and subsidiary operations. Emma's live stream had hit 6,200 viewers. The comment section moved too fast for human eyes. He's reading the receipts. 4.2 billion revenue. She assaulted a billionaire. This is insane. Jennifer Clark's radio buzzed incessantly. Regional managers, corporate legal, crisis communications. Everyone who'd seen the social media explosion was demanding answers she didn't have. Mr. Thompson, Jennifer stammered, if we could move this to a private... No! The word cut clean and final. This situation became public the moment it started. It needs to be resolved publicly. James turned to face Rebecca directly. She looked smaller now, compressed into the seat that had seemed like a throne minutes earlier. Miss Miller, he said quietly. You mentioned 15 years of loyalty to this airline. I appreciate customer dedication, truly. Rebecca nodded frantically, seizing the lifeline. Yes! Exactly. I'm Platinum Elite. I've spent thousands. Approximately how much would you estimate? The question came without malice, but with the precision of a corporate audit. Rebecca's brain scrambled for numbers that would impress a billionaire. 50,000? Maybe 60? She said desperately. James nodded thoughtfully. Significant personal investment. However, this airline processed $12.7 billion in passenger revenue last year. Your contribution represents 0.005% of our total. The math hit like a physical blow. Emma's viewers were doing their own calculations in the chat. She's literally nothing to him. 0.005% equals basically free. He just annihilated her with numbers. But this isn't about money, James continued. This is about systematic discrimination that cost us $12.3 million in settlements last year alone. Jennifer's face went gray. Those settlement numbers weren't public knowledge. Discrimination incidents involving assumptions based on passenger appearance, racial profiling at gates, unauthorized seat verification requests. James's voice remained calm, but each word landed with corporate finality. Behavior that violates federal law and company policy. Michael Davis wanted to disappear into the terminal floor. He'd positioned security officers to contain the victim of the discrimination they were supposed to prevent. I didn't know, Rebecca whispered. I didn't know who you were. That's exactly the problem. James's response came without heat, without emotion. Pure corporate analysis. You made assumptions based on my clothing, my skin color, my perceived social status. Then you physically damaged my property. He gestured to his torn shirt. The rip gaped wider now, threads hanging like evidence tags. Assault on airline property, destruction of passenger belongings, public harassment recorded on multiple devices. James enumerated each charge with boardroom precision. We have clear video evidence, witness testimony, and social media documentation. Emma's live stream counter hit 7,400 viewers. Screenshots were circulating on Twitter faster than the platform could track them. Number first-class drama had exploded beyond trending into legitimate news story territory. Rebecca's phone buzzed with incoming calls she was too terrified to answer. Furthermore, James continued, your social media posts constitute libel. You publicly accused me of fraud, theft, and criminal behavior without evidence. He turned to Jennifer. What's our standard response to customer assault incidents? Jennifer's voice cracked. Immediate removal from aircraft. Ban from airline services. Legal action if warranted. And discrimination by airline staff? Mandatory retraining. Formal discipline. Potential termination. I see. James checked his watch again. Corporate executives would arrive any moment. Let me outline what happens next. The entire gate area leaned forward. Even passengers at neighboring gates had stopped their own activities to listen. Miss Miller, you're banned from this airline for 12 months minimum. Security will escort you off the aircraft. Our legal department will review your social media posts for actionable defamation. Rebecca made a sound like air escaping from a punctured tire. Additionally, you'll provide a public apology video within 72 hours. Failure to comply extends your ban to permanent status. I can't, Rebecca breathed. My job. I travel for work. This airline is the only one with direct flights to... Then you should have considered those consequences before you ripped my shirt. The words hit like a gavel. Final. Absolute. Emma's chat was a supernova of reactions. 12-month ban. Public apology video. She's getting destroyed. Consequences have actions. James turned to Jennifer. All staff involved in this incident will complete mandatory bias training within 72 hours. This includes gate agents, flight attendants, and security personnel. Yes, sir, Jennifer whispered. Furthermore, I want a detailed incident report on my desk by 5 p.m. today. Include timeline, personnel decisions, and recommendations for policy improvements. Understood. And Jennifer? James's voice carried a new edge. This live stream is evidence. The world is watching how we handle discrimination. Our shareholders are watching. The FAA is watching. Corporate footsteps echoed from the terminal corridor. Expensive shoes on polished floors. The cavalry arriving too late. We are implementing new protocols immediately, James announced. Real-time bias reporting systems, customer dignity training for all employees, zero tolerance for appearance-based profiling. 3 executives in sharp suits appeared at the gate entrance. They spotted James's torn shirt and broken posture of every staff member around him. The situation became clear in seconds. Mr. Thompson, the lead executive said carefully, we came as soon as we heard. Good timing, James replied. We're discussing policy improvements. Rebecca tried to stand from seat 2A, but her legs wouldn't support her. The weight of 12 months without air travel, public humiliation, potential lawsuits, and viral infamy held her down like gravity. Please, she whispered. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I didn't mean... Intent doesn't erase impact, James said simply. Your actions were recorded, witnessed, and broadcast to thousands of people. The damage is done. Emma's live stream had become a cultural moment. 8,900 viewers and climbing. News outlets were requesting permission to use her footage. The story was writing itself across every social platform simultaneously. However, James continued, and Rebecca's head snapped up with desperate hope, genuine change is possible. For everyone involved. He looked around the circle of staff members, passengers, security officers, all of them caught in the gravity well of consequences they'd helped create. This incident becomes a learning opportunity. Policy changes that protect future passengers. Training that prevents discrimination. Accountability that means something. The corporate executives nodded furiously, already calculating damage control and implementation costs. Because this isn't about punishment, James said, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had built a $4 billion company. This is about making sure it never happens again. Rebecca sat in the stolen seat, surrounded by the wreckage of assumptions she'd made about power, privilege, and who deserved respect at 30,000 feet. The man she'd humiliated had just restructured her entire world with nothing but facts, consequences, and the calm precision of someone who understood exactly how much power he held. And he wasn't done with her yet. 2 security officers flanked Rebecca as she finally stood from seat 2A. Her legs trembled like a newborn foal's. The leather seat she'd claimed as her throne now felt like evidence of her humiliation. Ma'am, Officer Davis said gently, we need to escort you from the aircraft. Rebecca nodded mutely. Her phone buzzed with notifications she couldn't bear to read. Twitter mentions, Instagram comments, LinkedIn messages from colleagues who'd seen the viral footage. 12 months, she whispered to herself, the timeline echoing in her head like a countdown to professional death. James watched her gather her belongings with the same calm attention he'd shown throughout the ordeal. No gloating, no victory dance, just the measured observation of a CEO studying outcomes. "Miss Miller," he said as she passed. She stopped, hope flickering across her face like a candle in wind. "The apology video. Make it genuine. People can tell the difference." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears she'd been holding back for 30 minutes. She nodded once and let security guide her toward the terminal exit. Emma's live stream followed the procession. 9,400 viewers watched Rebecca Miller's walk of shame through Atlanta International Airport. The comments section had become a mix of celebration and cautionary warnings. Consequences delivered. Learn from this moment, people. This is what accountability looks like. Everyone film everything now. With Rebecca gone, James turned to the airline staff clustered around Gate 42. Jennifer Clark, David Wilson, Sarah Johnson, all of them waiting for judgment from the man they'd failed to recognize. "The mandatory bias training," James said to Jennifer. "I want it completed within 72 hours, not scheduled. Completed." "Yes, sir." All staff involved, well, not just staff involved. James's interruption was polite but absolute. "Every customer-facing employee in this terminal, gate agents, flight attendants, security, customer service, ground crew." Jennifer's mental calculator started spinning costs, scheduling conflicts, operational disruptions. "Sir, that's nearly 300 people. Then we'd better start immediately." The lead corporate executive stepped forward. "Mr. Thompson, we can implement a phased rollout over several weeks." "No." James pulled out his tablet again. This incident was live-streamed to nearly 10,000 people. It's trending on 3 social platforms. CNN just picked up the story. He showed them his news alerts. Headlines were already forming. "CEO racially profiled on own airline. Billionaire's shirt torn by discriminatory passenger. Thompson Aerospace faces bias crisis." "Phased rollouts look like damage control," James continued. "Immediate action looks like leadership." The executives nodded rapidly, already calculating media responses and stockholder communications. "Furthermore," James said, "we're implementing the Dignity First protocol effective immediately." He opened a document on his tablet. The policy framework was already written, as if he'd been preparing for this moment long before Rebecca Miller entered his life. No passenger profiling based on appearance, clothing, or perceived economic status. All seating disputes require supervisor approval. Customer discrimination incidents escalate directly to regional management. Jennifer took notes frantically. David Wilson looked pale but attentive. Everyone understood they were witnessing policy being born from crisis. "Technology integration," James continued. "AI-powered incident flagging system. Real-time bias reporting app for passengers. Monthly diversity audits using independent consultants." The numbers were staggering. Implementation costs would reach hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the alternative, viral discrimination videos and billion-dollar lawsuits, made the investment seem modest. "Employee advancement will be tied to bias training completion," James announced. "No exceptions. No grandfathering. Diversity education becomes a core competency requirement." Sarah Johnson raised her hand tentatively. "Sir, what about existing employees who struggle with the new requirements?" James considered the question with the same thoughtful attention he'd given Rebecca's demands for ticket verification. "Additional support. Coaching. Resources." His voice carried no judgment. "Change is possible for everyone willing to do the work." Emma's live stream had become an accidental documentary about corporate transformation. Business school professors would analyze this footage for years. The monitoring system, James continued, includes customer feedback portals connected directly to executive management. No more layers of bureaucracy protecting bad behavior. He turned to the corporate executives. I want quarterly bias metrics reported to the board of directors, trend analysis, improvement tracking, full transparency. The lead executive nodded. We'll have initial frameworks ready for review by Monday. Sir, that's only Monday. James's tone remained calm, but the word carried the weight of $4 billion in annual revenue. Emma noticed something happening in her live stream chat. The conversation had shifted from celebrating Rebecca's downfall to discussing broader implications. This is how change actually happens. Other airlines watching this right now. He's not just fixing one problem, he's fixing the system. Every airport needs this protocol. James seemed to sense the mood shift, too. This incident becomes a case study, he announced. Training material for bias awareness programs. Evidence that discrimination has real consequences. He looked directly into Emma's camera phone. For passengers watching this, understand that your voices matter. Document, report, demand accountability. The live stream viewers reached 10,200. Emma's phone battery was dying, but she kept filming. History was being written in real time. 6 months from today, James said, we'll review implementation results. Customer satisfaction scores, employee bias incident reports, stock performance. He closed his tablet with decisive finality. If these protocols succeed here, we expand them across all Thompson Aerospace Holdings, 12 airlines, 4 continents, 47,000 employees. The scope was breathtaking. One torn shirt at Gate 42 could trigger policy changes affecting nearly 50,000 workers worldwide. Jennifer's radio crackled with updates from operations. Gate 42, boarding is ready to resume. Crew standing by. James checked his Rolex one final time. Thank you all for your attention to this matter. He moved toward the jetway entrance, then paused. And Jennifer? I want that incident report to include recommendations from frontline staff. The people who interact with passengers daily often have the best insights for improvement. Jennifer nodded vigorously. For the first time since this ordeal began, she looked hopeful instead of terrified. James Thompson walked onto his own airplane, torn shirt and all. The flight attendants who'd been prepared to remove him now offered first-class service with newfound understanding of who exactly they were serving. Emma finally ended her live stream. 10,847 viewers had witnessed corporate accountability in action. Her final comment to the camera, y'all just saw how real change happens. Not with violence, not with revenge, with consequences that actually mean something. The video would be watched millions of times, shared across continents, taught in business schools as a masterclass in crisis leadership. Rebecca Miller's discrimination had backfired spectacularly. Instead of humiliating one black passenger, she'd triggered systematic reform protecting thousands of future travelers. The quiet man in torn clothing had turned her moment of prejudice into an industry transformation. And somewhere above the clouds, James Thompson finally claimed his rightful seat in first class, having used his power not for personal revenge, but for change that would outlast them all. 6 months later, Rebecca Miller uploaded her 100th bias awareness video to YouTube. What started as court-mandated apology had evolved into genuine advocacy. Her channel, Learning from My Mistake, had 340,000 subscribers, people following her journey from viral villain to reformed educator. Today marks 6 months since I assaulted a passenger on Flight 447, she said to her camera. 6 months since I learned that assumptions about people based on appearance destroy more than just relationships. They destroy souls. The comments section buzzed with support from viewers who'd witnessed their own transformation through her story. Your honesty saved my marriage. I was making assumptions about my husband's friends. Used your lessons in my hiring practices. We're more diverse than ever. Thank you for showing that change is possible. Rebecca had become an unlikely symbol of redemption. Corporate diversity trainers showed her initial Instagram story alongside her current advocacy work. The before and after comparison was startling, not just in message, but in humanity. Meanwhile, Thompson Aerospace's Dignity First protocol had exceeded every projection. Customer satisfaction scores increased 34% across all airlines. Bias incident reports dropped 78%. Employee retention improved 23%. But the numbers only told part of the story. Emma Rodriguez had been hired as Thompson Aerospace's Chief Customer Advocacy Officer. Her original Facebook live stream was preserved in the Smithsonian's digital archives as documentation of social media's power to create accountability. "People ask me what I learned that day," Emma said during her TED Talk. "I learned that ordinary people with phones can demand extraordinary change from billion-dollar corporations." Her live stream methodology was now taught in journalism schools. Document everything. Stay calm. Let the truth speak for itself. Jennifer Clark had been promoted to Regional Diversity Director after her exemplary implementation of bias training protocols. Her incident report from Gate 42 became the template for crisis response across the airline industry. "That day taught me that leadership isn't about avoiding mistakes," Jennifer reflected in her Harvard Business Review article. "It's about how quickly you transform mistakes into systematic improvement." David Wilson completed advanced bias training and became a senior instructor for new flight attendants. His transformation from complicit bystander to active advocate inspired dozens of airline employees to speak up against discrimination. "I realized I had a choice," David wrote in his training materials. "Stay silent and be part of the problem, or find my voice and be part of the solution." The ripple effects extended far beyond aviation. Hotels adopted Dignity First policies. Restaurants implemented bias training. Retail chains created customer advocacy positions inspired by Emma's role. James Thompson's leadership style became required reading at business schools worldwide. His response to discrimination, measured, strategic, transformative, demonstrated how corporate power could advance social justice. "The goal was never revenge," James said during his keynote at the National Diversity Leadership Conference. "The goal was systemic change that protects future travelers from experiencing what I experienced." His speech was viewed 3.2 million times on YouTube. Business leaders across industries cited his approach as a model for turning crisis into opportunity. But perhaps the most profound change happened in individual hearts. Airport staff began seeing passengers differently, not as potential problems to be managed, but as human beings deserving dignity. Gate agents learned to question their first impressions. Security officers practiced de-escalation instead of containment. Sarah Johnson, the gate agent who'd initially sided with Rebecca, became an advocate for bias awareness in customer service. Her training presentations began with a simple question: what assumptions are you making about the person in front of you? The transformation wasn't perfect. Progress never is. But it was real, measurable, and spreading. 3 major airlines adopted Thompson Aerospace's protocols voluntarily. The Transportation Security Administration incorporated Dignity First principles into national training standards. Airport authorities worldwide requested consultation on bias prevention. James's torn shirt from that March morning was displayed in Thompson Aerospace's headquarters lobby, not as a trophy, but as a reminder, a symbol of how individual dignity and corporate responsibility intersect at 30,000 feet. The placard beneath it read, "Sometimes the most powerful response to discrimination isn't anger. It's strategic action that creates lasting change for everyone who comes after you." Emma's original live stream reached 15.7 million views across all platforms. But more importantly, it sparked thousands of conversations about bias, power, and accountability. Kitchen table discussions, boardroom debates, classroom lessons. Real-life stories like this remind us that Black stories of resilience create touching stories of transformation that inspire systematic change across entire industries. The legacy lived in policy manuals and training videos, in customer service interactions and boardroom decisions, in the quiet dignity of travelers who now flew without fear of discrimination. Rebecca Miller's moment of prejudice had backfired so completely that it became a force for justice. Her attempt to humiliate one black passenger had triggered protections for millions of future travelers. And James Thompson? He continued flying in simple clothes, worn sneakers, and quiet confidence. The only difference now was that airline staff across the industry knew that dignity wasn't determined by designer labels or perceived social status. It was inherent in every passenger who walked through their doors. The story became legend in aviation circles. The CEO who turned discrimination into transformation. The passenger who live-streamed accountability. The woman who chose growth over defensiveness. But the real victory wasn't in any individual transformation. It was in the systematic change that meant no other passenger would have their shirt torn at gate 42. That was James Thompson's true masterpiece. Not punishment, but prevention. Have you witnessed discrimination in travel or daily life? Share your story in the comments below. Your voice has power. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to see that change is possible when we hold each other accountable. Subscribe for more real-life stories of quiet courage creating systematic change in corporate America. What would you have done in James's position? How do you use your influence to protect others? Let's discuss in the comments. Remember, sometimes the most powerful response to injustice isn't anger. It's strategic action that creates lasting change for everyone who comes after you.